I'm curious, how many of you are agency folks, by a raise of hands? All right. And how many of you are merchants? Okay. And technologies? Gotcha. All right. So it's a pretty even split, which is good. This presentation, Maverick Commerce, is meant for all of you. And the idea is quite simple. We want to grow e-commerce businesses faster. Whether you're a merchant or an agency, we're typically working together, or you're using third-party tech. And this is a little bit of a roadmap on how to do that. Now, why am I talking about this? So I've been the CEO of Media Spa for some time now. And in that time, we've worked with large businesses, small businesses. We've overseen a move from being a waterfall shop to an agile shop to being what we call a scrummish shop. We've had our developers completely under one roof onshore to having them all offshore to now having them be a hybrid of on and offshore developers. And we've learned a lot. And I want to share with you what we've learned. So we'll start with a thesis of how it is that Maverick e-commerce works and how we're going to make merchants grow faster. And then we're going to talk about what the elements that go into that thesis and then provide some examples. So the first most basic idea, the thesis here, is work smart or fail. And I will tell you that in, I don't know how long I've been in business, 20 plus years of working with folks, I can usually tell within the first conversation or two, maybe a week, if we're going to be successful together or not, or if you're going to need us a lot more than you should, based on the type of mentality you have. And working smart or failing is critical in e-commerce because it's so competitive. So if you have an inefficient process, or you don't know how to interact with your agency, or you have the wrong technology, you're probably losing ground to your competitors, and you may not be for this world for much longer. So what is the first step? The first step is this idea of being fluid. And being fluid is synonymous with being responsive, being flexible, being adaptive. And the key in the e-commerce world is that the status quo is not your friend. Things are going to change. Your needs are going to change on a daily basis. And when we start to meet merchants, the first thing we say is, teach us about your business. Open up and let us ask questions and be really giving with what makes your business tick. We ask questions to managers like, what is your bonus based on? What is your manager thinking about to judge you? And what is that manager thinking about to judge him? And if we don't understand what's driving success, we don't have any ability to manage tasks. So when somebody walks in the door and they say, hey, we got these 10 tasks, and you bang them out in 2 weeks, and we say, time out. If you want an order taker, you can go somewhere else because we're not going to be able to do effective work with that type of communication. What we need is true partnership so that we can be fluid and responsive and essentially help connect dots for you. So anecdotally, that looks like a non-fluid team says, that's not my job, and that's not the way we always did that. And a fluid team does say, how do we get there? And what is the right outcome? And if you're focused on the outcome and not necessarily the way you're getting there, the way you have done it, you've got a fluid team that can probably achieve a lot. And I want to tell a story about a company that we've been working with for nearly a couple years at this point. They're called Mark Fisher Footwear. Mark Fisher Footwear is, I believe, the largest wholesaler of women's shoes in the country. Don't quote me on that. And they have brands like Easy Spirit, Mark Fisher, Nine West. And the first project we had was to try and bring Easy Spirit from Demandware over to Magento. And we were told we needed to do that in 4 months. And this is a very large business. I don't want to quote revenues, but large, fast-moving business, short timeline, complex build. So the first thing we did to try and find a way to get this done in 4 months is completely throw the traditional design process out the window. And the idea was, Page Builder's great. Do you guys know what Page Builder is? Crickets. Page Builder is Magento's, what was initially called Bluefoot, and then Advanced CMS, and now Page Builder. It's essentially Magento's retooling of the CMS to allow you to publish content more flexibly. The product is great, but it's not everything. Although now it is native in 2.3, and it's got a lot of additional features in it. when we were doing this build, not all those features were in it, and there's still some that we have customized to allow the merchant to really do a lot of the design work on their own. So we looked at the needs. We said, look, we could grab a theme. We could customize Bluefoot. We could put all of the power in the hands of the merchant so that the work that we at MediaSpa are doing is only the highest and most complicated level work that's required. So this is an example of changing the banner to make it so we can add text as an overlay that can be searchable via SEO and add calls to action that could be edited. We also did some additional work with Page Builder on the video feature. So now we have videos that autoplay, are muted, there are no controls visible, and are totally responsive. So this client, Easy Spirit, had unbelievable video content, but they couldn't actually get it out there in a way that was fit for the brand. We made these Bluefoot customizations, and we circumvented what was usually a 2.5-month design process to essentially, a month of customizing Bluefoot. And that really helped us get to the finish line on time. Another example of being fluid and working with another client is our story with Formlabs. So Formlabs is a 3D printing business. They actually recently were valued at $1 billion. So they're doing a lot of things right. And one of the things that they're doing right is their engineering organization is pretty mature. So they have Magento developers. They are running headless e-commerce on Magento 1. They've got Django on the front end. They've got Magento on the back end. They are using Salesforce with their sales team to execute a lot of B2B transactions. And we're working with them now to make sure that their sales team can go into Salesforce and execute Magento transactions, a sort of complex integration on the back end, and redoing the front end and the rest of Magento to move from Magento 1 to Magento 2. And full disclosure, we started the project and we were screwing it up. And we were screwing it up because we were using our normal process, one where we're the developers and the merchant isn't contributing code. And it didn't work. And so we quickly realized that, and the pace of production was not what we needed to hit their deadline. And so we were fluid, and we changed the script. We decided that we didn't need to have a project manager running every meeting without the developers, because the developers and the complexity of the integration work was the key to getting this thing on track. So we did what no agency wants to do, which is that we put our developers directly in touch on a daily basis with our merchants' developers and let them have at it. And then we had to fight to figure out how to keep the project manager in the loop so they could still manage the project. And it has worked quite well, and that project, which was very behind, is now grooving. So one of the things that this ability to work in a fluid fashion has taught us, and some of the stuff that we have done as an agency, is to figure out where are we in the waterfall, agile mix. Does everybody know what an agile software development lifecycle is? Yes, right? You probably have all heard this term. I don't know, you probably each have a different level of understanding of what it means. So to just level set, I'm going to tell you what the Agile Manifesto calls for. And it is 1, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. 2, working software over comprehensive documentation. 3, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And 4, responding to change over following a plan. And I mention this because this is our process. This is how we talk to our merchants and say, this is how we're going to build you your site. And you can see from these little arrows that, yes, we are working in sprints, and we have this agile process which is not all predetermined and can change based on what's coming at you. But even this we can't follow perfectly, because if we do, we're going to waste hours for our merchants. And one of the things that we talk about as our mission is driving ROI-based relationships. So let me give you an example of why this is Scrum-ish and not Scrum, and not pure Agile. Let's say, as was the case with our Easy Spirit build, we have an ERP integration that's going live in 2 weeks. Now, that's 2 different sprints. Sorry, forget 2 weeks, 2 sprints. At the end of the first sprint, you're not able to do end-to-end testing because the integration work isn't done. If you're following a proper agile process and completing the entire software development lifecycle, you will complete QA and UAT in each sprint. Now, our merchant, in this case a very shrewd individual who would have called this out if we didn't call it out for him, is not going to want to pay 35 hours, in this case of QA, to do partial end-to-end testing when 2 weeks later we can test the entire system. So that's a situation where we are not going to do a full Agile or Scrum cycle, and we're going to cut that off because we know after the next launch, we'll be able to do end-to-end testing. And that's something that's appreciated and really drives ROI. All right, so the next thing is this idea of being kinetic. And in physics, kinetic energy is the work, that's what they call it, work it takes to get something moving to a certain velocity. And the work it takes to drop something down to that same, from that velocity down to zero is also called work, and it's the same amount of work. And the reason I'm talking about that is because it's the same with an e-commerce project. The work and effort it takes to ramp a project up to be at full production is really hard to get to, and if you have to stop because you have blockers, you've really lost a ton of momentum. So we like to say, always be coding. And always coding is not easy to do. And you can't react to having a blocker effectively unless you know what the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tasks are. And you can't define what those next tasks are unless, like we talked about in sort of the beginning of this talk, you don't know what the priorities of the business are. So an example here is with Easy Spirit. We were weeks away from launch, and a wall fell down in their distribution center. Literally, the wall fell down, and all hands were on deck rebuilding the wall so that they could segment inventory and distribute it. So we're like, shit, we were just about to launch. We were going to hit this on time. What do? Well, we had prioritized the next 20 tasks, and we quickly went to the pre-order functionality and said, you know what? We're going to drive pre-order functionality before launch, and maybe we can change the business this way. And we did. We actually took 25% of their business was pre-order before launch while they were still on demandware, and after launch, now on Magento Cloud, 40% of their business was pre-order. And the reason that happened is because we took that extra time to evolve the pre-order integration to allow their product to get on the website 30 days earlier than it had previously been able to. And you can see we've got this little, nifty add to cart, ships on such and such a date. The same information is in the checkout. And this feature, which we'll talk about later, contributed to increasing the bottom line because they now had more products to offer, more products to merchandise at an earlier date. So all that inventory that they were mobilizing was not just on a ship, but it was on a website. Going back to Formlabs, we had another situation where we were, like I said, we were behind the 8 ball because we had structured the team ineffectively initially. Once we got the team flowing and we had the right developer-to-developer communication going, we ran into a problem where the designers came back, and they were not our designers in this case, and had a really complex checkout. And anybody here who's tried to manipulate Magento's checkout knows that it is a large task, and it requires a lot of QA. And generally speaking, if you are happy with the out-of-the-box Magento checkout, good on you. You'll save yourself a little bit of a headache. So 5 minutes. I'm going to talk really quickly now. What we ended up doing, which was effective and being kinetic here, is we quickly found an extension that could not solve all of our needs, but had a module that we could put in to our custom checkout design. And that let us circumvent a lot of custom coding, which nobody had the time or money for. The third piece of Maverick Commerce is being transparent. Now, everybody talks about being transparent and probably says they're honest, and a lot of you are lying. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to lie anymore because it actually helps your business to open up and be honest about about a lot of things. The first thing is with money. If the merchant comes in the door and he says, I need this for X dollars, and everybody in the world knows it's 3X dollars, run away. Unless you have a unicorn. Because if you can do it good, fast, and cheap, and you have the unicorn, then maybe this does exist. But the point is, I've never seen that. So if you're transparent with your partner, whether you are an agency or you are a merchant, be honest about what things cost and what's expected, and you won't put yourself behind the 8 ball. You won't end up with the C team because you're underpaying, or you won't end up with a really cushy agency that's taking advantage of you because you don't understand why things cost what they do. So educate yourself and be open about it. This one is a contentious topic in the industry, I would say, fixed bid versus hourly. MediaSpa is almost exclusively an hourly business, and I would tell you that this is better for our merchants as well as for us. And the reason is because it allows complete transparency. Every one of our merchants knows how many hours we spent on every task, and they've been pre-approved hours. And if we're going over, we let them know that, and they can see how the progress is going on a per-task basis. If you work on a fixed bid basis, or you're a merchant that's demanding fixed bids in your RFP, what you're doing is you're taking a gamble and you're saying, I want a winner and a loser here. And I think if you go into a relationship as intimate as e-commerce development is, wanting a winner and a loser, you've probably already lost. I don't want to be the agency that got a 60% margin on a deal because I snowed the merchant into thinking that this was more than it cost. I want to be really clear about what scope is and appreciate that it changes on a daily basis. And if you don't have an hourly relationship, you cannot do that effectively. The last thing about being transparent is just respect the spirit of the agreement. Again, whether you are a merchant or an agency, when you make a deal, you know what was expected and you know what the rules of the road were. And yes, you have some legalese to follow. But if you are a good human and you are just honest and open and you're talking about things on a regular basis, things like contract negotiation, change orders, escalations should be easy conversations. They may not be fun conversations, but they shouldn't be protracted 2-week events with a lot of pain and anguish. You should get to the source of the problem, move on. All right. The final component of Maverick e-commerce is being lightweight. And what does being lightweight mean? It means use the out-of-the-box features of the technology that you've chosen. If it's Magento, there are a ton of things that Magento does that nobody uses just because. Ask yourself, if I'm bringing in this third-party technology, is it because I know that their feature set is this much better than the out-of-the-box Magento? Oftentimes it is. But if you're not asking that question, you're potentially creating a lot of technical debt that you don't need to manage. The other is use approved extensions. Magento has gone through the process of approving extensions and having a better marketplace. So start there. And if you have to leave outside of the marketplace, do so very carefully. And then don't be afraid to hack the design process. Our days of doing these long custom designs that take 2 and 3 months and cost a lot of money are largely gone. There are a few instances where we think it's totally appropriate. But more often than not, we're taking that time now and we're doing user research, we're doing user testing, and we're taking those findings to have a data-driven design that, yes, probably leverages a template. Now, we'll maybe customize that template, but we now have the data to inform the content strategy that's really going to drive the user experience. And then finally, only customize when you need to. There will be times when you have to. We work with a lot of very complex businesses that have business rules that are unique. And you'll have to customize. And that's sort of the roots of our business. But do it only when you need to. So bringing this thing home, why would you do this? Why would you be lightweight? Why would you follow these Maverick Commerce principles? Well, if you ask Easy Spirit, we were able to migrate 7 million orders and 1.6 million customers, move from M1 to M2 in under 200 hours, launch in 4 months, bring their total cost of ownership, and that's actually the M1 to M2 migration was Mark Fisher, but the Demandware migration to Magento was Easy Spirit, and that's where the total cost of ownership came down 50%, moving from Demandware to Magento. We increased our conversion rate 10%, in large part due to the checkout. And we increased their sales 11% in large part due to increasing their pre-order functionality. And then the last one is 9 West, which was the next migration we did, moved them over from Demandware. We're able to utilize the same structure of our multi-tenant environment, utilize Page Builder so that we weren't reinventing the wheel, but if you look at these sites, you have no idea that they're related. But yet we just did a few more tweaks in Page Builder. Use the same critical third-party tech, in this case, Turn2 and Amarsis, and launched in under 100 hours. This is a massive business, 9 West, that we launched in under 100 hours in less than 30 days of kickoff for MediaSpa. So in summary, be fluid, be kinetic, be transparent, be lightweight, and I think you'll grow your business faster. Does anybody have any questions? I'll take some claps. I mean, that's okay. You know, we could do that. Do we have time for any questions? Anybody? Nobody. One question? It's all obvious? All right. Oh, there is. There we go. So I believe they had a team of 18 running the Easy Spirit business, including the developers, the digital, let's call it the e-commerce team. That team is down to about 8, and that is split between the agency and the merchant. Yeah. You put me on the spot there, but I will take the bait. We have historically been a dive right in shop. We got on cloud immediately. We got on 2.0 immediately. I will tell you, it doesn't hurt to wait a little bit. A little bit depends on the release. You know, I think 2.3, our devs have started playing around with it in the sandbox. I don't have enough experience with that release right now to say would I wait a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, but a little bit is okay. Yeah. If I were starting development today, I would build on 2.2. Sorry, Magento. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, what happened when you pulled the project managers out of the room on Formlabs? I'll tell you, initially we pulled them too far out of the room and communication broke down, and then we brought them back in a little bit, and now we have found a way to make sure that the conversations happening between developers are, enough of them are known by the project managers that they can keep the timeline moving and the resources allocated.